Hello, and welcome to PoliticOly episode 27. It's September 6th, 2020, and I'm recording in Olympia, Washington. This is a weekly news show where I'll go over some local and regional news and politics stories, share upcoming events and active fundraisers, and I'll typically have a feature topic or interview as well. Last week I had a segment called Voting Green in 2020. Context, strategy, and debate, which you can find a link to below. And I also had an interview with C.J. Sellers, Washington State Volunteer Coordinator for the Hawkins Walker 2020 Green Party for President campaign. This week I'll talk about the situation here in the Greater Olympia area where Michael Reinoehl was killed by police, the Thurston County Commission race with breaking news with regard to both Democrat Carolina Mejia and Republican C. Davis. American Wolf continues their fundraising scams by buying a military-grade water cannon, the People's Party Convention, and more. I welcome your comments below, and you can find my contact info below as well as links to everything that I talk about in the show. Switch off the memes, switch on the news here. All right. In my 2020 primary election wrap-up video, I said that the Thurston County Commission District 1 race was going to be possibly the most important election on our ballots on November 3rd here in Thurston County. To recap, Democrat Carolina Mejia won the primary, but the three conservative candidates combined to about 10 points ahead of Carolina if you were to add them together. Right-wingers have done well here the past few elections, so it would be wrong to underestimate their vote due to Carolina getting first place in a primary with many candidates. That said, she is in a good position considering her opponent C. Davis is not a particularly strong candidate generally, in my opinion. That's the background. But since then, things have taken two dramatic turns. Local right-wing activist John Pettit filed a legal complaint against Carolina Mejia questioning her citizenship and eligibility to run for office. However, news broke Friday that a judge had thrown out the case and is in fact holding Pettit responsible for Mejia's legal fees. It's not a surprising decision considering the ridiculousness of the birther-style claims, but it is a good ruling, and here's her statement following the decision. Quote, "It's done. It feels like the burden has been lifted, but I'm still processing it." Pictured. Moment after judge dismissed the case in his final decision. Lagging a bit here. There we go. I want to thank everyone, community members and community leaders who have supported me and lifted me up through the allegations and the birtherism attack on my citizenship. But especially a big thank you to Washington State Dems for stepping up and providing direct support in the form of counsel and company. This is not how I imagined I would be celebrating my primary victory. Unfortunately, I'm not the first or last person of color or immigrant who will go through this type of harassment. This challenge has been difficult, but it's been rewarding to know that the community members I seek to represent do not stand for this hate and bigotry. We are pleased that we can now focus on issues that are affecting our community so that we can keep Thurston thriving. Thank you. And again, that was Carolina Mejia, who is running for Thurston County Commission District 1. I also want to just make a quick note that there was a call for court support for Carolina for the hearing on Friday, and so many people showed up they had to cap it at 100 on the Zoom call. So that's a great reminder to folks that court support in the time of COVID is one accessible way that you can support calls from the community for folks when they need some court support. Now, this is a story in Jolt, Journal of Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater, titled Candidate for County Commissioner Accused of Sexual Harassment by Madeline Shannon. And I've talked about Republican candidate C. Davis previously and warned people that we need to make sure he loses every time he tries to run for office, which is regularly. I had heard stories of him engaging in inappropriate behavior that creeped out teenage girls in the past, and now there have been several articles recently corroborating that concern. Here's one. The subtitle is Multiple Local Women Come Out Against C. Davis. And C. Davis, aka C. Davis Plover from 2020 campaign materials. That's the photo. Quote, C. Davis, a candidate for the Thurston County Board of Commissioners, allegedly made inappropriate and creepy remarks to girls as young as 12 at local churches, offering them flowers and candy, and seemingly made a point of trying to find a child bride in a church setting. Several women, most of whom are now adults, accused Davis on social media in recent days, with one confirming to the Jolt that the Thurston County Republican candidate made advances to her about 16 years ago. The mother of another girl told Jolt that Davis's troubling behavior has continued more recently, with her daughter bothered by interactions with him when she was just 13 years old. The accusations, which Davis denied, saying he doesn't even know the people raising the issue, were made on Facebook in recent days after the August 4th primary election. When I was 12, quote, when I was 12, C. Davis began attending St. George Church in Lacey. My family was very involved in the small church community, and I knew just about everyone, said Marianne Williamson, who said she was harassed by Davis as a girl. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. Williamson grew up in the Olympia area, but now lives outside of Thurston County. And the article goes on with further details, so I encourage you to take a look at the link. But essentially that also just backs up what I had been saying that I was hearing from others in the community, in addition to these folks mentioned in the article. I've heard other stories about other people. So again, these are all accusations, not legally proven. However, again, just many different corroborating accounts. There's an article in the Olympian as well. So, given that situation, as well as the dire need to move the commission to the left, and then you consider Carolina's unique experience and understanding of how to make our system more compassionate, and I encourage my viewers to support her campaign if you can. As a leftist, some Democrats I'm not interested in voting for, but on a local level, there are candidates who are from the community and working class, and they're not corrupted by politics, and then that is the kind of Democrat I can support, and that is Carolina Mejia. You can find her PoliticOly interview from July in the links below as well. Next, I wanted to take a look at an article in Huffington Post posted on September 4th by Christopher Matthias, titled Spokane Protester, I was abducted by unidentified officers, put in unmarked van. Subtitle, The arrest of Jeremy Logan, co-chair of a DSA chapter, appears to have been politically motivated and carried out by a sheriff hostile to Antifa. Pictured is Jeremy Logan. Quote, a co-chair of the Spokane, Washington chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America says unidentified law enforcement agents arrested him while he was walking to a Black Lives Matter protest last weekend, put him in an unmarked van, and detained him for more than a day as federal agents attempted to interview him. The arrest, which two of the activists' friends witnessed and confirmed to HuffPost, follows a disturbing trend of law enforcement snatching protesters off the streets this summer, often without identifying themselves. Jeremy Logan, a 40-year-old DSA member, tenant rights organizer, and owner of a paintball company, believes the whole ordeal was either an attempt to pressure him into providing intel on his fellow anti-fascist activists, or retaliation for past statements he's made criticizing police. And you can find the link below to read the rest of that. There's more details in there, and I think it's worth reading the whole thing. But again, just some additional disturbing news coming out of all corners of Washington State, in this case Spokane. So thank you to Jeremy Logan for your activism and for your work with DSA, by the way. A quick one here. In case you are looking for a volunteer opportunity, something you can do to help the community right now, one thing is volunteer for the Cielo Project. Quote, calling for volunteers. We are looking for volunteers, English or Spanish speakers, to help us serve school-age children in grades 1 through 12. If any of you would like to be a Cielo volunteer helping to promote building more equity, diversity, and inclusion in our community, please consider registering to volunteer with us today. And you can find a link to this post where you can find more information about that. Now I'll talk about Michael Reinoehl. This is an article in Vice featuring their interview with Michael, posted on September 3rd, titled "Man Linked to Killing at a Portland Protest Says He Acted in Self-Defense," by... Where's the author? Let's find it. Cameron Joseph. Wait, that might have been something else. Vice is confusing. Anyway, I'll try to find the author, but it just says by Vice News. And in this article, as I said, it features an interview with Michael Reinoehl, who allegedly shot Aaron J. Danielson, a Patriot Prayer group member down in an event in Portland recently. There was a caravan of Trump supporters and trucks and everything, and this man Jay was in a hate group, Patriot Prayer, and he was heavily armed. He had a knife, a baton, pepper spray, and he also had a concealed handgun with several dozen rounds and multiple clips. And I don't know exactly all the details of the interaction, but it resulted in Michael shooting and killing Jay, the Trump supporter, Patriot Prayer member. And so this article and this interview he did because he felt that it was in self-defense and there wasn't anything else he could do. He said, quote, I had no choice. I mean, I had a choice. I could have sat there and watched them kill a friend of mine of color, but I wasn't going to do that, end quote. And it continues by Reinoehl's description of the folks basically after that hunting him down, and they had posted about hunting him down, and they had allegedly shot at his house at night and things like that. And so he had tried to, and he didn't think he could go to the police because he felt they were working together, the Patriot Prayer folks and the police, and justifiably so, by the way. And so he went and then he talked to media to get his story out. And then that same day, he was shot and killed by a U.S. Marshals task force in Thurston County near Lacey. And this is the updated article they posted the next day, September 4th. This one's by Tess Owen, titled, "Police Don't Have Their Story Straight About the Killing of Michael Reinoehl." He'd been on the run since he was named as a suspect in the fatal shooting of a supporter of the far-right Patriot Prayer last weekend. And, quote, "Two different police jurisdictions involved in the killing of Michael Forrest Reinoehl late Thursday are giving divergent accounts of how it happened, and a third account from a bystander is fueling rumors on the left and the right. It's also being picked up by media outlets across the country. The official account from the Thurston County Sheriff's Department in Washington State is that Reinoehl, a self-described Antifa activist, was running away when he was shot dead by officers with the fugitive task force. During the attempt to apprehend him, shots were fired at the suspect in the vehicle, and he fled from the vehicle on foot," they said in a statement, which also noted that the incident occurred around 7 p.m. local time. Additional shots were fired at the suspect, and he was pronounced deceased at the location. Meanwhile, U.S. Marshals leading the task force said they attempted to peacefully arrest Reinoehl and only shot him when he produced a firearm threatening the lives of law enforcement officers. Task force members responded to the threat and struck the suspect, who was pronounced dead at the scene, they asserted in a statement. No officers were harmed. And then it goes on to, I end quote there. And then it goes on to talk about how the local Olympian newspaper story about this included quotes from a couple of men who said they were eyewitnesses and said that Michael had fired dozens of shots at the officers from an assault rifle or something like that. But they had essentially just basically made that up, as far as we know. And that is not actually what happened. And some folks who went to their Facebook pages afterward noticed that these were like Blue Lives Matter, Trump supporter guys. And so the Olympian, once again, just publishes whatever the cops tell them to, basically. And that's how you get these unreliable accounts that they publish. So always be careful of the police narrative and the Olympian narrative. One thing in this discussion that I think gets lost a bit is because we're also so focused on Reinoehl, but not so much on Patriot Prayer. And Aaron J. Danielson is just sort of referred to as a Trump supporter and a right-winger. But Patriot Prayer is more than that. It's a hate group, and this is one example of information you can find on Patriot Prayer with a quick, easy Google search, and you can find that they are a hate group, and the leader of Patriot Prayer has instructed members and supporters to be armed at rallies, saying, quote, "Everyone should be carrying around guns at all times, especially people in our situation." And they are well known for making violent threats, right here, explicit threats against Portland anti-fascists, and it just goes on and on. So these are extremely dangerous people, Patriot Prayer members. You have to consider that they are armed and homicidal based on their own posts and things that they say. So the idea that Michael truly feared for that other individual's life and or his own is not at all ridiculous if he knew that Jay was from Patriot Prayer and he knew the history of that group and the threat that they pose. And of course, in fact, as mentioned, Jay was found to have a handgun with several dozen rounds of ammunition on him. So, but anyway, regardless of all that, whether it was self-defense or not, what Michael deserved was a fair trial. And he felt that he had a good case, which is what he had said in that interview and why he reached out to the media, because he felt he had a good case that it was self-defense. And so what he deserved was a trial, and what he got was an execution at the hands of the police. And it was a U.S. Marshals task force, but that is comprised of individuals from Thurston County sheriffs, Pierce County sheriffs, and others. And there are rumored connections between some individuals in these departments with the Patriot Prayer group and other dangerous right-wing hate groups. So anyway, this is not surprising given everything that we know about the situation and that I've been talking about for months now. But it is always very sad to see. Michael leaves behind 2 children, and again, just deserved a fair trial, not an execution. And I'll report more on this case as we get more information. And if you have an opinion or question or a link to information I maybe haven't seen on this yet, feel free to comment. One more small piece that I wanted to add on here is a tweet by Emma O'Connell, who is a writer for the Olympia Standard podcast, a blogger at Olympia Time, rather. And they say there is a lot to unpack about the shooting/death last night, not least of all where it happened. The unincorporated part of urban Thurston County east of Lacey is one of the least white parts of the county. This piece on Skyway from yesterday says a lot on why that is. And that links to an article, which we'll get to in a second, but continuing with the quote here. What you might not know about Lacey and Tanglewild, Thompson Place, and the Meadows is that some of these neighborhoods predate Lacey as a city. And as Lacey grew in the 1990s, it skipped over annexing these older neighborhoods, choosing instead to annex undeveloped parcels. That gets you a map that looks like this, and there's a link. The gray areas east of Lacey are essentially a pretty significant community. More than 10 years ago, I counted almost 22,000 people out there. So, thanks to Emmett for that reporting. And I just want to take a real quick look about this article that Emmett linked to, titled "For Black Lives Matter to Matter in Washington, Skyway Has to Matter," which is an opinion piece in Crosscut posted by Girme Zahile on September 3rd, 2020. And this details a similar situation that Emmett was just talking about, but in Seattle. And, quote, Skyway is a diverse neighborhood just south of Seattle and north of Renton. This community sits atop a hill at the south end of Lake Washington and is home to more than 18,000 people that I represent on the King County Council. Skyway is also home to the highest proportion of African Americans of any area in Washington state. That means for Black Lives to Matter in Washington, Skyway has to matter. Unfortunately, for many decades, our state and local governments have not treated this community like it matters. As I wrote in February, today, despite its prime location next to the major commercial and industrial centers of Seattle and Renton, Skyway still lacks sufficient access to basic amenities and resources. It lacks a community center, accessible healthy food and grocery options, and sufficiently developed streets and sidewalks. 75% of its buildings are more than 40 years old. The area doesn't have access to rapid transit, thus restricting the flow of funding for critically needed affordable housing. The childhood poverty rate in Skyway is 3 times as high as the countywide median. And it continues, and I encourage you to follow the link and read this to learn more about that area. I was not terribly familiar with most of this history myself, so this is a very very helpful piece and informative. Again, by Girme Zahile. And this, oh boy. So, I reported last week that local right-wing hate group American Wolf was fundraising off the notoriety of the Kenosha shooter. They raised tens of thousands of dollars for the killer's legal defense, but also took thousands of dollars for themselves, and also supposedly Republican governor candidate Lauren Culp, though I haven't yet seen evidence that that actually went through. We'll keep an eye on that. Well, it looks like we know what they're spending some of that blood money on, as they recently posted about this military-grade water cannon. Look at this thing. And then they immediately made a post trying to fundraise enough money to get it transported and repaired. Oh boy. I can't imagine this is legal. Not that legality means anything anymore for these right-wingers, but you remember Peter Diaz and American Wolf are notorious for driving around in just ridiculous limos with American Wolf logos and all this, and well, now I guess they've got a little bit more of a tank here, but anyway, I want to hear from you. Comment whether you think we'll actually see this thing in action on the streets of Olympia, which would just be an absolute catastrophe in my opinion. Or do you doubt they'll ever get this thing running or even allowed on the streets? After they were kicked off of Facebook and GoFundMe, they moved around to various other platforms as people report them, and they get banned from one after another. So just goofy, folks. And also, there was a post on one of the local groups that kind of trolling them, saying that because these American Wolf folks are just so into this whole macho, we're lone wolves, blah, 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 protecting whatever. And they have this whole macho narrative, and it's all just bogus, of course. And so, folks, we're going to do American Unicorn and and troll them. So I'm on Team American Unicorn in that confrontation there. Anyway, not to make and I make light of it, but I will note this is very serious, and they threaten violence, and do take them terribly seriously, as ridiculous as they are. On to some upcoming events. Right after this show, starting at 2 p.m. today, is a Black Lives Matter rally in Shelton. If you can make it, thank you for representing, and stay safe and protect your comrades. If you would like to comment on how it goes for next week's PoliticOly episode, feel free to contact me. The right-wingers have been posting about being terrified that Antifa is coming to burn down Shelton, an obviously fake threat, but they just use it as an excuse and get all riled up. So just be aware, be careful. It says a lot that what they're really afraid of most is anti-fascists, right? But you can't get through to these folks, right? Tomorrow at noon, the Hawkins Walker campaign has a Labor Day live stream planned, and you'll notice rocking the H2O Howie Hawkins Angela Walker 2020 button here. And anyway, so I'm curious to see what they have to say on the Labor Day live stream here. They both have very strong labor records, and the campaign has a very strong labor platform. And I imagine anyone interested in labor issues will want to be tuning into that, which you can find a link to below. This is an event coming up on Sunday, September 13th from 2:30 to 9:30 p.m. at the Washington State Capitol, titled Black is Beautiful. And there is all kinds of stuff planned for this. Quote, day fair, nighttime show, vendors, activities for kids, variety show in the evening, COVID precautions being had as this event is outside, and we will be ensuring the proper precautions and distancing for individuals. So take a look at that if you're interested. That sounds like a fantastic event folks have planned for the community there. This is an event that I planned, and it's a sign waving event in support of the Hawkins Walker 2020 for President campaign here in Olympia. And I wanted to do something where we can support the campaign, where folks can see us, it's visible, but we can also take proper precautions. We can be masked up, we can have plenty of distance between each other and hold signs. CJ Sellers has this fabulous banner here that hopefully they can bring down, and we should have some signs as well. You're welcome to make and bring a sign if you can, or you're welcome to come and use one of ours. You're also welcome to come and join if you are in any kind of group, or if you want to share some kind of message that is allied with the Green Party message, which is broad socialist agenda, right? Black Lives Matter, the Sharonda Amamilo campaign, which is a local political campaign for a Superior Court judge position, and she has been nominated or endorsed rather by the local Green Party. Anything, the Socialist Party, DSA, anti-nuclear folks, all welcome. So love to see some friends down there, and we're just doing that at the corner of Black Lake and Cooper Point because it is the busiest intersection in town there, and there's plenty of space all around that intersection for folks to stand and be in a visible place, but hopefully not obstructing anyone or causing any issues with distancing guidelines. So that would be Saturday, September 26th from noon to 2 p.m. And for more Green Party events in Washington State, I recommend checking out greenpartywashington.org/events, where you can see a list here, because there's all kind of things coming up. There is Extinction Rebellion Justice is doing an Indigenous Environmentalism 101 event, and that is tomorrow. And there is a Ranked Choice Voting 101 webinar here by Fair Vote Washington. We really need ranked choice voting in Washington. We got to all be pushing for that to make all these political projects of the people, uncorrupted political projects, able to be successful. Tacoma LNG, liquefied natural gas plant, that's referring to resistance organizing meeting, Green Party sign waving in Bellingham, police accountability protest, racial justice, climate justice, all kind of events coming up here. So take a look at that and find something near you, so you can support the Green Party wherever you are. Now, this is a fundraiser titled Housing for Isaiah and Family. It's at a bit over $3,300 out of $5,000 goal. So if we can get this over the finish line, that would be awesome. And this was posted in Lacey, Washington, I believe, And, quote, Isaiah is a wonderful man who has taken in his 3 nephews and is currently living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 6 kids and 2 adults. They just signed a 1-year lease. They'll need to break the lease and find a new living space. Currently, both adults are sleeping on the floor to make room for the kids to have sleeping spaces. Please donate if you can. We need to find something else for them quickly. So, if you can go to the link below and chip in a little bit to help get this family a secure situation for those kids. All right. I'm going to just play this muted in the background here. This is a video titled Platform, People's Convention 2020 by Movement for a People's Party. Today's featured topic is the Movement for a People's Party. Movement for a People's Party was founded in 2016 with the goal of drafting Bernie to run independently of the Democrats for the 2020 election. That, of course, didn't work, and over the past couple years, they've been switching gears to looking beyond the 2020 election. MPP held a major online event last weekend, the People's Convention, which has well over 500,000 views now across platforms. They had 400,000 total views by the end of the live stream. Over 100,000 people have signed up, and there's a lot of buzz around social media for the new party. I want to link you to a couple other people's videos on the People's Party to learn more. One is the Humanist Report by Mike Figueredo, and take a listen, and then you can follow the link to hear all of Mike's commentary, but I'll just play this piece and a bit at the end where he's got short clips of a few of the various speakers.
I don't know about you all, but I still feel demoralized and a little bit uneasy after watching the, cringeworthy DNC convention and the horror show that was the RNC convention. But thankfully on Sunday, we had a different sort of convention take place. The Movement for a People's Party held their People's Convention, and this is what I want to see. It featured prominent speakers such as the great Cornel West, Nina Turner, Marianne Williamson, Mike Reinoehl, and the list goes on. Basically, the goal of this was to bring people together to create a new People's Party, an alternative to the two-party duopoly that we see that very clearly isn't doing an adequate job at representing us. Now, 85,000 people actually signed up to support this. So it's nice to see a lot of people kind of coalesce around this one big idea of, hey, the two-party system isn't working out, so let's subvert that and create our own thing. Now, the Greens 5%, right? So what I want is for the people.
There is a huge fundraising deadline coming up for Senate Democrats, and they need your help right now.
People's Party to be a thing that's viable. So if you support this, and I don't know who doesn't support this, because whoever can't see the need for an alternative to the Democratic and Republican parties, I don't get that. I don't understand you. But I think most people who are watching know that there's a need for this. We need a People's Party, and I'm glad this came together. So what we have to do now is put in the groundwork. This is a grassroots movement, right? This is the formation of a People's Party. So that means you put in work. You push for electoral reform. You push to make sure we get campaign finance reform to decommodify elections. So this new institution that we build, if we make it viable, doesn't get corrupted in the same way that Democrats become corrupted. But with that being said, overall, speak. These are my favorite parts from the convention.
Capitalism doesn't separate itself from racism.
You cannot fix something that was built to be broken. We have to shatter the systems that oppress us and rebuild everything for all of us.
the audacity of both parties in this country to say we cannot afford universal health care when Democrats and Republicans both fund our war machine. Well, guess what? It's time for us, the people, to be audacious.
I'm sure you've all noticed that the two-party system is not working for everybody. In fact, it's only working for corporate America and the wealthy elites.
They fear the third party more than anything else. And guess who knows that from experience? You're looking at him.
See, they think we're stupid. They think we're stupid. They think we're afraid.
How are we ever going to stop the racial injustice crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the for-profit prison industry? How are we ever going to stop the cost of healthcare crisis and the lack of healthcare crisis when both parties are in the pockets of big pharma and the giant insurance companies? How are we ever going to stop the economic inequality crisis when both parties are in the pockets of the billionaire class?
There have been people in every generation that have taken the wheel, had pushed back against the forces that were transgressing against our principles, and did what it took to get this country back on track. It is simply our turn.
57 years and 3 days ago, the greatest public intellectual in the history of the American empire died in Ghana. His name was W.E.B. Du Bois. And that next morning, young brother Martin Luther King told America about a dream that he had, which was not the American dream, but a dream rooted in the American dream, and has everything to do with the movement for People's Party. Because what we're talking about here is a people who muster the wherewithal, who have not just the courage, but the fortitude to fructify. And by fructify, I mean to generate the fruits of truth-telling, to generate the truth of justice-seeking, to generate the truth of kindness and sweetness and gentleness in how we relate to each other, but with a steel spine when it comes to bearing witness in the face of oppression.
All right, and I'll pause there because I want to play a couple of specific parts of Senator Nina Turner's convention speech. And that starts with a poem.
As I was listening to folks, two people came to mind. One was Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? And then the other one was a poem that Langston Hughes wrote, and I believe he wrote it in 1938. And he was talking about the pain of Jim Crow and what was happening in this nation. And it's titled Kids Who Die. And I just want you, just wrap your mind around this just for a moment. Can we just take a moment? Because it is as if Brother Langston Hughes is talking about this very moment. See, I'm full right now. This is Sunday, and I am feeling all kinds of spiritual waves right now. Kids who die. This is for the kids who die. Black and white, for kids will die, certainly. The old and the rich will live on a while, as always, eating blood and gold, letting kids die. Kids will die in the swamps of Mississippi, organizing sharecroppers. Kids will die in the streets of Chicago, organizing workers. Kids will die in the orange groves of California, telling others to get together. Whites and Filipinos, Negroes and Mexicans, all kinds of kids will die who don't believe in lies and bribes and contentment and a lousy peace. Hello, somebody. See, this poem encapsulates this very moment. Brother Langston Hughes is talking about this very moment. I hope you caught what he said. He said, telling others to get together, whites and Filipinos, Negroes and Mexicans, all kinds of kids will die who don't believe in lies and bribes and contentment and a lousy peace. That is what the movement for a People's Party is all about. We don't believe in the lies and the bribes and the contentment and a lousy peace. How can we have peace in moments like this, when over 90 million of our sisters and brothers are either uninsured or underinsured? How can we have a peace when you got a Congress that goes on recess while millions of people are facing eviction from their homes? How can we have peace when on the streets of America right now, Black lives have been lifted and reaching out, calling out the racism and the white supremacy and the bigotry of a system that was created for Black lives to languish? How can we have peace when you the racist, bigoted system, the system that oppresses the poor? That system was created by design. It didn't happen by accident. It was on purpose. And on purpose, we the people can turn this thing around. So we got some dragons to slay, baby. We got to slay the dragons of neo-fascism. As Dr. West said, the gangster in the White House, he must go. There is no doubt about it. He must go. And I agree with Dr. West that people are coming at this at all angles. I get it. See, I'm not a boat shamer. I'll leave that for the professionals. Hello, somebody. I'm just old fashioned, and I just believe that folks who are running for office ought to earn the vote. And how do you earn the vote? You don't earn it by doing the same old, same old. You earn that vote by giving people a vision. See, you got to have a vision that provides provision for the people. It is our money. It is our government. And so you got folks sitting up there talking about what we cannot have with our money, what we cannot have with our government, it's a lack of vision. So it is time out for playing games. There is no more time for playing games. But we're not going for a lousy peace. So we come together in the spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. We stand together as people from all walks of life who understand that we must put a little extra on our ordinary so that extraordinary things can happen. They will. They have throughout the course of history. We stand in solidarity with other poor people all around the world. Hello, somebody. Because the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. got it right when he said what happens to one directly happens to us all indirectly. We won't stand for a lousy peace. Even as we fight the neo-fascists, we will not stand for a lousy peace because we know that neoliberalism is what got us here. And so on purpose, we gonna put a little extra on our ordinary so that those extraordinary things can happen, and we are gonna lift and we are gonna rise together. And listen, brothers and sisters, we're gonna win some and we're gonna lose some, but people gonna know this, that we are in this fight for life, for liberty, and everybody's pursuit of happiness. We will not fall for a lousy peace.
That was a beautiful speech by Senator Nina Turner, and I recommend you watch the rest of her speech as well. Next, I'd like to move back to Cornel West for just a moment. I wanted to play actually the end of his speech, and you can go follow the link to watch the rest of it. But I thought the end was particularly good and particularly relevant to the conversation we've been having about voting green in 2020.
And reawakening of it. Last but not least, at this particular moment, I've got brothers and sisters on both sides. When I listen to Noam Chomsky and Angela Davis, and even my dear brother Bob Ovakin and brother Carl Dix and others, they say, oh, we agree with the critique of the empire, but we cast a vote for Biden. I say, ooh, I'm not used to voting for milquetoast folk like that. But the anti-fascist folk, okay, I do understand. But I hear my dear brothers and sisters on the other side, Chris Hedges, Glenn Ford, Paul Street, Margaret Kimberly, Juma Baraka. I love those folk too. I learned so much from them. They all comrades. They say you can't vote for a neoliberal. You can't vote for the same Biden. You bring such critique to bear. You got to go for Green. You go for Brother Howard. You go for Sister Angela. That debate is a real one. And it ought to go on. And at the moment, I'm leaning with Angela. I'm leaning with Marianne. I'm leaning with Noam Chomsky. But it's not that it makes me that much better. I just believe as part of an anti-fascist coalition, Trump's fascism is one that calls into question the very possibility for any rights and liberties so that all of us could be gone. That's kind of basis that he has. What is it? 1 out of 4 of the folk who support him want to shut down the media. That's the kind of fascist sensibilities. This is Sinclair Lewis. It can't happen here, taking place slowly in real time before our eyes. This is the kind of moment we live in. This is why this movement for People's Party is so fundamentally crucial. And we will resist the same self-righteousness that we get among the neoliberals. We are stepping into the unknown. So what? I come from a people that step out on nothing and still land on something that we hate, that we help create based on a love of truth and a love of goodness and a love of beauty. And keep beauty in there. Beauty is very important for empowerment. So I want to bring this to a close. I want to thank you, Brother Nick. And I want to let you know that we've got to make sure that the lifting of the voices become waves all around the country, grounded in the local, but always having a global perspective of the American empire, keeping track of its worst, but also keeping track of the radical democratic tradition that has lodged itself at the center or at the center of the soul of America, but never at the center of American politics. And it has always been multiracial, even though in a certain sense, it's been disproportionately Black. That's how deep white supremacy cuts. And you can't have fascism in America without white supremacy being its face. And that's why it's so crucial that all of us attempt to be decent people, people who have integrity, honesty, and courage, and be willing to enact kenosis, to empty ourselves, to donate ourselves, to sacrifice ourselves for something grander than us, that have everything to do with the best of those who came before and have everything to do with the children yet to come.
And again, that was just the end of a great speech by Dr. Cornel West, so I encourage you to follow the link below and watch the whole thing. Next, I just want to play a couple of short clips from Chris Hedges' speech.
It is impossible to work within the system to shatter the hegemony of oligarchic power or institute meaningful reform. Change, real change, will only come by sustained acts of mass civil disobedience and mobilization, as with the Yellow Vest movement in France and the British-based Extinction Rebellion. If we do not respond to the social and economic catastrophe through college, if we do not rebuild our labor unions, along with instituting universal health care and an end to the squandering of our resources on endless war. Yes, we need new radical parties, which is why I'm here today. And in this election and from now on, we need to stand up for our values, not surrender them, which is why I urge you in this election to vote for the Green Party. I am not willing to surrender every issue I care about to become an accomplice in this moral squalor and death march to extinction. But I'm also not naive enough to tell you we can win. The corporate state has built very effective mechanisms of control and oppression. But these corporate forces have us by the throat, and they have my children by the throat. In the end, I do not fight fascists because I will win. I fight fascists because they are fascists. Thank you.
That is an excellent message by Chris Hedges there. And again, that was just a couple of short clips, so you can follow the link to watch his whole speech. And finally, I will just share a short clip from the Katie Halper show from September 2nd. And this is an interview with People's Party co-founder Nick Brana.
You ready to go? Okay. Welcome, Nick Brana. How are you?
Katie.
Hey, how are you? Nick at night. That's great.
Doing great.
Great.
a mix of ecstatic and exhausted and thrilled. But yeah, doing great. Good to see you.
You too. We had Marianne Williamson on Sunday, right after the People's Convention. And people were mad at me for not covering it because it's true, I was derelict, but I saw some very inspiring videos, and I think I thought it was going on for many days, because if it were in real life, it probably would have, but things in Zoom get a little collapsed and compressed. But tell us what you guys achieved and what happened, and was it a historic moment?
Geez, I hope so. It could have been multiple days. When we initially announced it with Senator Turner and Dr. Cornel West, which was only 3 weeks before we actually had the event.
Wow.
And so like I'm kind of blown away by what we managed to achieve, and I'm super happy about what we managed to achieve in 3 weeks and all the people we got together. But we had it at only 2 hours. And then the response was so overwhelming in terms of speakers and, people who wanted to join, that we just had to keep kind of like extending the program. And it ended up being almost 6 hours, like 5.5 hours. And a bunch of us were like, oh, geez, I don't know. Are people going to be into that? Are people going to watch the whole thing? Do people have like the attention span for more than like a movie?
Right.
But in the end, there was like, we were like number 2 top trending and number 5 top trending throughout the entire presentation, and people were watching the whole thing. It was amazing. Like it blew us away.
Yeah. And what is the People's Party's vision?
I mean, so we came very much out of like the Bernie campaign in 2016. I was Bernie's national political outreach coordinator, lobbied the superdelegates for him, miserable job, and then helped him found Our Revolution, was the electoral manager there. And those experiences convinced me personally that the Democratic Party could not be reformed, that it was, as corporate as the Republican Party. Corporate law, they take the same corporate money, even on the CPC, unfortunately, and they have
the CPC being
Congressional
Progressive Caucus.
Yeah, and they have corporate lobbyists on their national committee, which they just defended like about a few weeks ago, and decided to re-up that. And so I got together with some other Bernie volunteers and staff and delegates, and we all said, there's a majority of Americans now that are calling for a major new party, and we think that's exactly the direction that we should go. Things like this are working in other countries, like in Europe and in Latin America.
And that, again, is a clip from the Katie Halper show, which you can find a link to below. There's a lot of, further conversation that's interesting there. So take a look and give a subscribe to Katie Halper. So the argument for the Green Party is that people have been working on it since 1988. And, that, of course, includes the current presidential nominee, Howie Hawkins, and all of that work isn't for nothing. It's a lot of work building ballot access and building name recognition, and the Green Party has in fact won. Whoops. Clicked the wrong address there. This is the peoplesparty.org webpage. Anywho, so the Green parties have locally won over 1,000 elections so far. So it's already a base and a history on which we can build, whereas the People's Party is starting from scratch, so it's just going to take far longer than we have time for. The People's Party counter-argument is that with the number of people they hope to reach as a mass movement party, the ballot access issues and other problems will be relatively easy to overcome. The People's Party convention was a great point in their favor because, as you've heard, they've got over 1 million views already and, you know, big names to participate and just a ton of interest from folks. And so that's a point in their favor on that argument because of the number of people participating so far. So what do you think? I'd like to hear in the comments, and I'll follow up in the coming weeks. Should we start a local hub for the People's Party here in Olympia? Have people already started working on that? Have you started working on it in another area where you live? I'd love to hear from you. And again, we will follow up going forward. That's it for today's show. I want to thank you all for joining me and for all the support. Every like, comment, and share on social media is greatly appreciated. I want to keep building this as a local platform for community discussion of the news and politics that affects us here in the Pacific Northwest from a leftist perspective. If you would like to be a part of the show in some way, you can find my contact information below. Thank you, as always, to all those working to make a better world in every way that you, in every way that you do. Love, peace, and see you next week.